Hello and welcome to First Unitarian Church of Providence, where we love beyond belief. I'm Neil Bartholomew, the chair of the Worship Committee, which hosts a series of services during the summer when our senior minister is away. These services are led by lay members and friends of the congregation, and the music is also provided by members and friends of the congregation. As our bridging team continues working on the logistics and planning for bringing us safely and equitably back into our meeting house on Sunday mornings, we are presenting the services for the first portion of the summer as a series of online videos. We hope that you will enjoy the variety of wisdom and talent that our congregation has to offer. And now, please join in our unison reading as we light our chalice. This light burns also in our hearts, and it lights our path towards harmony, justice, and hope for all.
Welcome again to the First Unitarian Church of Providence. My name is Ted Martin. I've been a member of the church since 1989.
I'm Roxanne Stern. I've been a member of the church since 1984. To celebrate the 300th anniversary of our congregation, 3 of our summer services will showcase the work of 3 prominent ministers of the 20th century.
Today, we share the works and words of Reverend Thomas E. Ahlburn, who served our church from 1975 until his retirement in 1999.
The music director for this church during most of Tom Ahlburn's ministry was Donald Dane. One of his regular practices was to end the service with ragtime played on the organ. To honor that practice, today's music will be ragtime played on the piano by Linda Gully. Later in the program, we will hear The Nightingale by Joseph Lamb, and now we will hear Scott Joplin's Maple Leaf Rag.
invocation today is in the form of a responsive reading, something which we have not been doing often recently in our services, but which was used in almost every service during Reverend Ahlburn's ministry here. This particular reading was written by Tom himself.
For those of you who may be unfamiliar with how responsive readings work, I will read the first line and Roxanne will respond with the second line. Then I'll read the third line and Roxanne will respond, and so on. The words will be projected on the screen, so you can respond along with Roxanne if you'd like. Without your friends, you would be a total stranger. Your friends help you understand who you are. Without your friends, you'd be a total stranger.
A good friend's visit is like a cool breeze on a hot, sweaty day. It's like a drink of cold water when you're dry and thirsty.
A friend is someone who doesn't care if your hair's too long, your socks don't match, or you forgot to brush your teeth.
Finding a good friend is like coming home after being lost for years in a dark woods. It's like waking up to a white, snowy world on Christmas morning and finding a new bicycle under the tree.
Friends want you to feel happy, safe, and comfortable. Your friend is a secret hideaway. Your friend understands when you're tired and cheers you up when you're sad.
A friend knows when you need to cry and doesn't make you feel silly or weak because of it. Being with a friend is like putting on clean pajamas after a hot shower. It's like slipping into your own bed under brand new sheets when you haven't had a good night's sleep in a long, long time.
When a friend goes away, we feel a part of us is gone. We feel our friend's absence down in our toes and out to our fingertips, down our backbone and deep, deep in our hearts.
We look to the sky for our friend's smile. We listen to the wind in the trees for our friend's voice. But no one looks, sounds, or feels quite the same as our friend.
There is nothing like a good friend. Without your friends, you would be a total stranger. Tom Ahlburn served the First Unitarian Church in Providence from 1975 until his retirement in 1999. He was born, grew up, and began college in Ohio. His training for the ministry led him to Vanderbilt University in Nashville, Tennessee, and then to Ottawa, Canada, where he served his first congregation as assistant minister from 1967 to 1970. He subsequently served a congregation in Springfield, Massachusetts for 5 years, and then came to be the senior minister here at our church in 1975. Tom was noted for his social activism. He advocated for reproductive rights and helped women obtain abortions in Canada and in the United States. He also counseled those who chose to refuse the draft during the Vietnam War. He was an advocate for LGBTQ people, performing commitment ceremonies for couples long before same-sex marriage was accepted. He was also active in George McGovern's presidential campaign. When Tom first came to us, he identified himself as a rational humanist, but his spiritual journey here led him through various twists and turns to finally arrive at Tibetan Buddhism. As he continued to serve First Unitarian, he joined the Mahasiddha Temple and the Khmer Buddhist Society of Rhode Island. Throughout his life and through all these changes, he maintained a philosophical view handed down from his fundamentalist aunt. As long as a person is honest and fair with others, how that person lives or what they may believe is their own business. For many members of the congregation, what was most remarkable about Tom were his sermons, or as he later decided to call them, talks. He had the extraordinary capability to touch both our intellects and our hearts, often in the same sermon. He used stories of his life with geese, with wounded squirrels, an aged turtle, interactions with his crusty Kentucky grandmother, the trials of Boy Scout camp, and the challenges of Baptist Sunday schools and computer games to connect with us at a very personal level. Tom was a nature lover, a writer, a poet, and a dedicated advocate for humans and other creatures whose voices were inadequate or non-existent. He was a humble and socially shy man with a highly intelligent sense of humor that was sometimes misunderstood. He gave generously of himself not only to our congregation, but also to the larger community. We invite you to share with us a hymn that expresses Tom's spirit, philosophy, and gifts to our community.
My life flows on in endless song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off, hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear that music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me blows, I hear the truth, it liveth. What though the darkness round me close, songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Let us settle into the spirit of meditation and prayer, first spoken, then a few minutes of silence. During the silence, if you have lost a loved one in the past year, you are welcome to stand or raise a hand to acknowledge that loss. First, a poem by Reverend Ahlburn. Days of wonder and wild honey, from deep summer, well provided with rain, a sum of delightful darkness and splendid suns. From life singing in the rivers of the night, throbbing in the damp heat of the day, from jumping and flying and creeping beasts that are born and change and die and disappear, from the sweet cut grass, the insects rising out of it, the rich odor carrying from it, the birds feasting over it, from roots sent out to anchor us on earth. Something to outlast us and join us beyond this hot sky and night's frozen distance of stars. to you and to me, in and out of our separateness, come these days of wonder and wild honey. One of Tom Ahlburn's skills and talents was writing. In the late 1980s through the early 1990s, the Providence Journal published a column entitled Face of Religion, in which a select group of guest writers, mostly clergy, submitted essays relating to religion and its relationship to laws and government. Tom was one of these writers, and his pieces inspired many controversial letters to the editor. Later, Tom collected these essays into a handmade book entitled God and Grandma's Chickens, which was also the title of one of these essays. Our first address will be read directly from this book and discusses a principle held by one of our founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson. This piece was published in 1993. I have changed a reference to time to make it current. Separation of church essential to Jefferson. Since today is Independence Day, and because we recently celebrated his 278th birthday, it is in order to think about Thomas Jefferson, our third president, and the author of the Declaration of Independence. He is also widely considered to be the chief architect of the presently embattled doctrine of the separation of church and state. After writing the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson set about drafting legislation to democratize the royal colony of Virginia. By his own estimate, the two most important bills he submitted to achieve this end were those for education and for religious freedom. If the American people were to govern themselves responsibly, there had to be general enlightenment at the common expense. As he saw it, a free people could prosper only so long as they funded excellence in their public schools. And there must be a genuine separation of church and state. Any and all sectarian aspects of religion, Jefferson would leave up to the individual and the home, and to the volunteer and politically neutral organizations that churches should be. The state must always be separate from the theological teachings or binding morality of any one church or religion. The likely alternative, as Jefferson saw it, would be a tragic repeat of Europe's bloody history of religious intolerance. What's more, he believed very deeply that no people can freely govern themselves when hard-pressed by strident and conflicting voices pretending to speak with supernatural authority. To Jefferson, religion was fundamentally a private thing, as were all the most precious things in life. It was something to have and hold, not to blab or quarrel about. He thought that any spiritual outlook preferred by the individual was acceptable. In fact, Jefferson argued in a heated debate on his bill for religious freedom in the Virginia Assembly when he said, quoting Jefferson now, "To comprehend within the mantle of its protection the Jew and the Gentile, the Christian and the Mohammedan, the Hindu and the infidel of every denomination," end quote. Was Thomas Jefferson perhaps thinking of himself when he spoke of this infidel of every denomination? Maybe so. He called himself a Unitarian, though he never joined a Unitarian church. And he claimed he was also a Christian, but only in the sense of trying to live by the more reasonable and moral precepts of Jesus. Culling from the New Testament the passages he found most helpful, he compiled a kind of loose-leaf Bible of Jesus' teachings that suited his own spiritual needs and desires. To this, he added the sayings and sentiments of the Greek philosophers Epictetus and Epicurus. They seem to have meant even more to him than Jesus. Quote, "Epictetus and Epicurus give laws for governing ourselves," he said. Quote, "Jesus, a supplement of the duties and charities we owe to others." Jesus as a supplement to the wisdom of philosophy? This was Thomas Jefferson's evaluation. To him, Jesus was an especially gifted human teacher, a very good man who lived and died many, many years ago. The only sound reason he saw for exalting Jesus above the ancient philosophers was that he, Jesus, would extend, quote, "the circle of benevolence," end quote, to all humanity, instead of restricting it. But President Thomas Jefferson did not believe that Jesus was God, nor did he believe in identifying Jesus with the dogmas of, quote, "artificial systems invented by ultra-Christian sects, unauthorized by a single word ever uttered by him," end quote. Here the him refers to Jesus. In all of the above, Jefferson's unifying concern was not to convince others that he alone possessed the truth about Jesus or religion, but the freedom of each individual to decide for herself, without public shame or recrimination, what she shall or shall not believe. But to many, the president was an infidel. The words of Reverend Tom Ahlburn. Thank you.
As I mentioned earlier, Tom had a remarkable way of connecting to both our intellects and our hearts. Roxanne's reading was a very good example of something meant for the intellect. I'm going to read something that Tom wrote that was aimed at our hearts. A deep power within and beyond the self. There is a deep power within and beyond the self that isn't touched by pain and loss, even by our doubts. As we become aware of this power, as we acknowledge and respect it, we understand that what one believes or does is not as important as opening one's heart to that which lies beyond the self. As we honor and acknowledge this deep power within and beyond the self, new doors open for us. Still, most of us are afraid. Often we feel lost and unloved, powerless and alone. It's hard to believe in a deep healing and helping power at the heart of one's being. Life is not easy for any of us, no matter where or when or how we live. For many, existence is especially hard and painful. Countless living beings have never known even the briefest moment of peace or happiness. But life is not fundamentally tragic or absurd. There is a deep, healing and helping power in each of us that cannot be touched by suffering, nor by hatred, ignorance, or greed. Sometimes this deep power opens before us and within us. We are surprised by life's great wonder and joy. When this happens, we no longer feel powerless and alone. Healing begins in us. We are free. We are good for others and ourselves. Fear is only love stopping short of infinity. Life is good to those who live it with faith and trust. The human heart is a window opening onto divinity itself. When we are open to that which is greater and deeper than the self, when we give our hearts over to this deep power within and beyond the self, accepting ourselves as worthy of this help, everything else follows. Nothing is more important than this. Be open to that which is greater and deeper than the self. Do whatever you can to bring yourself to a place where you will be able to allow this deep power within and beyond the self to help you, however long it takes. But begin today. There is a deep power within and beyond the self that isn't touched by pain and loss, even by our doubts.
In this unusual time when we cannot be together as we are accustomed, the work to fulfill the mission of our church continues. Our staff work harder than ever to support our connections as a community, and our efforts to create justice in the wider community continue. The need for us to fund these efforts is even more important than ever. Please go to firstunitarianprov.org and click on the Give menu. You may do so during the following offertory music, or you may prefer to wait until after the end of the service. As always, thank you for all that you give, all that you do, and all that you are.
We hope you have enjoyed sharing the works and spirit of our beloved Reverend Tom Ahlburn. We will close with his favorite benediction.
May God watch between you and harm in all the empty places you may walk.
In the evening of life, you will be judged by love.
May all beings
be happy.
We hope that you've enjoyed our service today. As a self-supporting congregation and a beloved, aspiring community, we rely on generosity and commitment to keep us vital and relevant. We invite you to practice generosity and dedication by going to www.firstunitarianprov.org and clicking where it says Give to support the mission and vision of this church. And now please join me as we extinguish our chalice. Carry the flame of peace, love, and hope until we meet again.
May